Hi, Shanti. Okay. The hours between India and Israel.
Sorry, everyone. I just had some technical issues. So Geshe will be here any minute. So I just want to tell you that there is the WhatsApp group. If you are not in the WhatsApp group, you are welcome to be there. You just had to announce me and I will let you go inside. And then there is the material for the course. So I put the material in the Dharma Friend web so everyone can see it. And in the WhatsApp group too. So there is two places to see the material for the course, if it's a PDF or recording or everything that Geshe is sending for us. So if you're not in the WhatsApp, so please go inside the Dharma Friend web and you can see it. Geshe is here, so we will start. I will just make co-host. Okay. Geshe, you are now a co-host.
Great, thank you. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. So let's start setting the motivation. And as I said last time, we can't stress enough how important it is to generate the right kind of motivation to understand everything we're going to talk about being quite difficult, parts of it being really difficult when it comes to emptiness. So the best type of mind, most conducive mind to get a good understanding of what we're going to discuss is the mind of bodhicitta. So let's generate this together, of course, based on great love and compassion and so forth. So we'll do it together as usual. But we'll start with some breathing meditation. Okay. And then, as usual, visualize the object of inspiration, the object of refuge in the space in front of you, in the form of Buddha Shakyamuni, who's inseparable from your spiritual masters, your lamas. And think that you're surrounded by all sentient beings. For whose benefit we're here today. And then remembering that everything in our life, all the good things in our life, come from other sentient beings. Material objects we enjoy, our education, and in particular, our spiritual development. Would be impossible without other sentient beings. So recognizing their kindness, their importance, and how close we actually are to other sentient beings. Let's generate affectionate love. Generating a sincere sense of concern. Seeing sentient beings as deserving of our love and affection. And then while focusing on sentient beings' sufferings, their shortcomings and limitations, and just the fact that they're caught in the ocean of samsara, has generated great compassion. The wish for all sentient beings to be free from samsara and its causes. And the wish, may we be able to assist sentient beings in overcoming samsara and its causes. And that mind of great compassion then gives way to the altruistic attitude that doesn't merely aspire, but is determined to do whatever we can to help sentient beings overcome samsara and its causes. To take personal responsibility for the well-being of others. And then based on this attitude, this determination, let's generate bodhicitta. The sincere aspiration to become fully enlightened for the welfare of each and every sentient being. Which is also the motivation for studying the Precious Garland. So then let's recite the prayer together without losing the mind of bodhicitta. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits, of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Okay, great. Just a sec, I just need to get the material. All right, so starting with the meditation, or, well, at least the preparation for the meditation on the Lamrim, which fits really well with the text we're studying, since, and I believe I said that before, since the Precious Garland is based, no, the Lamrim teachings are based on the Precious Garlands. Of all the different texts by Nāgārjuna, they're mainly based on the Precious Garland. Or mainly, yeah, well, it's one of the more important texts. Anyway, so last time I briefly mentioned these 8 freedoms, but I want to say a little bit more about it today because it's so important to meditate on them for 2 reasons, basically. One reason, just to get a more positive way of looking at our own life, to reflect not just on the have-nots, which we oftentimes do. I mean, living in the 21st century, where I guess, well, the media, modern advertising, the modern way of life basically suggests that we don't have enough, that we never have enough. And so to get a good sense of all that we have, all the incredible opportunities we have in this life, which is quite rare in comparison to other people. But it also, at the same time, so our second reason is that it motivates us to seize the opportunity and not to waste our life, to practice the Dharma to the best of our ability. And as the texts say, to take the essence of our life. And all the great yogis, they basically start their meditation with a meditation on their precious human existence. And so to take the essence of our life basically means to practice the Lamrim, practice whatever we've learned, which can be included, of course, in the practice of bodhicitta and the practice of emptiness. And so to reflect and really take the time. Now, I'm not saying just go over it. Yeah, sounds nice. Okay, I understand this kind of intellectual way of looking at it. That is totally useless. Or not totally useless, but it won't have a great effect. So something the lamas always emphasize, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and many other great lamas and teachers, they talk about a feeling, generating a special feeling. It's very hard to put it into words. They just say toa. But I guess we all know what it means to really get a sense, I'm not reborn in any of these lower states. I wasn't reborn as a celestial being, as an animal, to actually get a sense of how fortunate we are. So it's not this superficial intellectual way, but to really feel it from deep within. Now here it mentions, well, the hell realms, really, life forms experiencing continual pain and fear. Well, first of all, if we have a hard time with the hell realm, with the acceptance of the hell realm, we may just start with ways of life, with forms of life in this world, in this human existence that are characterized by incredible pain and fear. So I'm sure we can think of people in certain areas where, I don't know, maybe in terms of incredible cold, incredible heat, incredible suffering due to illness and so forth. So we just need to read the news. I mean, there's so much suffering that we can read about in the news. So to get a sense, I'm not experiencing this. I'm so fortunate right now that I don't experience this. But actually, to totally avoid the idea of like a hell realm, I don't think it's a solution. And if we have some sense of the Dharma, that so much of it, when it comes to the Four Noble Truths, bodhicitta, the view on selflessness and so forth, if that makes sense to us, why will the Buddha talk about hellish existences that we just cannot perceive if that wasn't true? It doesn't really make any sense. And to not totally avoid it, but to also allow the possibility that there are these hellish existences where the sentient beings are trapped in for so long. And really imagine, really visualize it, get a sense, what would it be like to be in these states for such a long time? Or life forms such as the preta existence, where you experience continual frustration and clinging and so forth, a lot of suffering, never being satisfied, always striving for more. And of course, there are a lot of existences in the human existence, in the human realm, where sentient beings are never satisfied. There's always new problems. They work so hard, put so much time and energy into achieving something, and they never do. And again, when we're trapped, when we're in these situations, just like in these hellish existences or the preta existences, well, there's no time really. There's no space in our mind to practice the Dharma. And animals, well, it's pretty obvious, lacking, of course, to some degree, the brain, if you like, the kind of intelligence that is necessary to sit down and reflect on the future, reflect on our present existence, take the essence of our life, and so forth. So in general, maybe there are some exceptions like Naga beings or what have you, but in general, animals, yeah, very difficult for them to accumulate virtue. And then, of course, the celestial beings. And again, in the human realm, I mean, there's so many celestial beings in the sense nowadays, like the super rich, that a lot of people, well, admire. I mean, they would like to live that kind of life. But if we think about it, so this existence or the celestial realm, and again, not just going over it, but to really feel it. If I were trapped in such an existence, leading a totally shallow and meaningless life, if I'm lucky, I experience some problems. But if I'm not lucky, I don't experience any problems. I'm just wasting all the positive karma that I've accumulated. So basically just wasting all this virtue for meaningless pleasures and very little time or very little interest in accumulating merit. So just thinking of these states, we've not been born in any of these states. We've been born in a situation being human, but not just being human, but having an interest in the Dharma, being open to the Dharma. And as it tells us here, well, we're not born in a country where, for instance, religion is outlawed, where we're not allowed to practice. I mean, there are countries definitely all over the world. We know of some of them, living under the Taliban, for instance, where declaring that you're Buddhist will probably cost you your life. So you have to do it totally, you have to practice in secret. And you have no Dharma friends to turn to, maybe online, but if the internet is controlled, if people watch what you're doing, I mean, it's potentially dangerous to even go online and inform yourself about the Dharma, receive teachings. Or to be in a place where Buddha's teachings are not available. So we have a sense, well, that probably means a time when the Buddha's teachings are not available, but we're literally talking about a place, because in this world, in this world, this universe, or this world system, if you like, of course, the Dharma is available, the teachings are still available, but there are other worlds, there are other galaxies, there are other world systems where there are humans similar to us, but they don't have Buddha's teachings available. There's nothing there. So again, we've avoided that. We're not mentally, retarded. We don't have mental problems that keep us from practicing the Dharma. I mean, being deaf or dumb or blind, it's not necessarily an obstacle nowadays. There's a lot we can do. But again, if you lived in a different world where you didn't have all these modern, gadgets that help you to deal with it, very difficult to really practice the Dharma. I mean, how are you going to listen to a Dharma teaching if you don't have Braille, if you don't have, what have you, I mean, no braille, it's just if you're blind, but how do you listen to a Dharma teaching if you're deaf, for instance, and there's no way, there's nothing to read or nothing, no subtitles, etc. So how do you get teachings in that way? And of course, lacking the right kind of attitude, being totally uninterested. Practicing the Dharma, that's just a bunch of hippies. They're doing something really weird and it's got nothing to do with me. I'd rather enjoy life. I mean, that attitude is actually the most dangerous of these. So to really get a sense, to spend some time, if it's just 10 minutes, but make these 10 minutes mean something, make them meaningful, and like really generating a sense there are so many people, so many beings who live such lives. And even if they're born humans, well, the Dharma is basically at the click of their fingers, well, no interest or no possibility to practice, no chance to transform their mind and just find more inner peace, more satisfaction, not even talking about liberation and Buddhahood. So how fortunate we are, how incredible fortunate. If we look around, how few people are really interested in the Dharma, even if they call themselves Buddhist. So to get a strong sense of that and not to waste it, not to waste any more time. We wasted a lot of time until now, but to be determined not to continue to waste time. All right. So that's about the precious human existence. And yeah, let's do this together. Let's make this time. I mean, 10 minutes, I'm sure everyone can spare. And so to meditate on the Lamrim, prepare our mind and make this class more effective to get a better understanding of the meaning of this precious text. Okay, so that's the first part, talking about the Lamrim, but I also received some questions, and now I need to look for them. Where are the questions? Just a sec. What happened? Okay, I can't see them right now unless Dalit, if you could display them on the screen.
Just a moment.
Yeah.
I just share them.
Okay.
Question. Okay.
Oh, great. Thank you. Oh, yeah. There we go. All right. Shmuel asked 2 questions and Jimmy did as well. So about the teachings of the universal vehicle. The teachings of the universal vehicle were given by the Buddha to select disciples only. It is said that nowadays the merit of practitioners is generally speaking less than at the time of the Buddha. It follows, nice in that kind of debate style, that ideally the teachings of the Mahayana should be given only to select disciples only. Do you agree? Okay. So basically what he's saying, at the time of the Buddha, it is said that the merit of practitioners was greater, but the universal vehicle was only given to select disciples. Nowadays, it's available to anyone. Shouldn't it be just given to only select disciples? Okay. Well, first of all, nowadays, what I also hear him saying is, well, nowadays we don't have as much merit. In the past, they had so much merit. So therefore, how come that the teachings are available? I mean, nowadays, that's also how I would interpret this question. Well, first of all, it's true that it's said that in terms of merit, well, when we say merit, it's important to remember in relation to what? Merit in terms of, well, having the Buddha around. Absolutely. To be able to receive teachings from the Buddha himself. So practitioners had greater merit. Having more conducive conditions in terms of it being so much more accepted if one just left one's home and became a practitioner. And also less distractions, I suppose. Yeah, definitely less distractions. So in that sense, it was more conducive to practice the Dharma, but still, for a lot of people at the time, it was overwhelming to generate responsibility for all sentient beings. So the idea of for every sentient being, it was, I guess, as it's described in the Mahayana, was too much. Now, let's not forget the people, I guess we could say mainly the human beings who lived at the time of the Buddha, or the human beings who live nowadays also lived at the time of the Buddha. Maybe not around the Buddha. I mean, in other places, maybe in other universe, in other galaxies, who knows? But many of them who received teachings first of the fundamental vehicle, their mind became riper. They became more ready to receive the Mahayana teachings, or I shouldn't call them Mahayana, but the teachings of the universal vehicle. So their minds became just more ready. It didn't scare them. It didn't put them off to a degree that would have happened in the beginning. But that's just in the ideal case. At the time of the Buddha, I guess the minds of beings were such that if they heard a teaching and it kind of made sense to them, they practiced it really sincerely. Whereas nowadays that doesn't happen any longer. So even if the teachings are widely available, it doesn't really make a difference. So the teachings of the Mahayana, well, should be kept secret. I don't think that's a problem, because people wouldn't fall into the same extremes of maybe discouragement, because they don't take them as serious. So at some point after the Buddha's passing away, well, 400 years after the passing away, the teachings became available, but I don't think practitioners were as sincere in their practice as they are now. But it was good to have the access to it, so at least get the imprints without falling into some kind of extreme, like, oh, this is too much, I can't do this, being discouraged. As I said, people weren't as dedicated 400 years later after the passing away of the Buddha. So it kind of makes sense to me, and I'm here, this is just my own opinion, but it makes sense to me. It was great to have it widely available, so that those who did have some imprints and who generated a deeper and deeper interest, well, they had access to it. And nowadays, I mean, the tantric teachings are ideally still practiced in secret, and even they are widely available. And some people would definitely criticize that, and rightly so, because, well, they should be practiced in secret. However, some lamas are also saying, well, it's good to just have the access to get the imprints at the very least, even if they don't sincerely practice it. And if they see it once and they see it twice, then they generate more of an interest. And once they're ready, they have enough, I don't know, imprints, for lack of a better word. There's enough residues left in their mind so that they can actually practice it. So in that sense, I think it makes sense that they're widely available. But I'm not sure I answered your question to your satisfaction. So if I didn't, please ask again. And about this term.
A note?
Yes, please.
It's not just the merit of the person, it's also the need. It's like, because now the Buddha is not around, there is far more need for the Mahayana, because it's more effective and so on.
That's true. Definitely, yes. Yes, it's more needed than at the time. Okay, so from the point of view, I think you're right. So from the point of view at the time of the Buddha, people naturally practiced or led an ethical kind of life. So nowadays there's much more need for something drastic, like a lot of emphasis on this taking responsibility for the well-being of others. Yeah, that's a good point. Very nice. Yeah, thank you. And anyone else would like to contribute any idea how to answer this, you're very welcome. But then about the second, well, regarding the second question, so about the translation term, well, I said that that I think devotion is not a good translation of the Tibetan term. I mean, I didn't mean don't use the word devotion, but I think it needs to be understood in the right kind of context, because devotion, like especially religious devotion, I'm not talking about like love and feeling devoted to a certain person. I'm not talking about that kind, but like religious devotion, which oftentimes is associated with like a surrender to God, and kind of an unquestionable surrender to a celestial being, a godlike being, which oftentimes also involves shame and guilt. Kind of like there's always this higher being that I have to surrender to, I have to just accept, I have to just have faith. So I'm talking especially of the Catholic belief that I was raised in. So this don't question, just believe. So that kind of devotion is not what we're talking about here. So devotion in Buddhism, a strong kind of faith, is a joyous type of mind. First of all, very important, a mind that gives us a deep sense of joy, not excitement. Oh, there's a new movie out, or I can just get this new pair of clothes or something, like joy in that sense. No, a deep sense of joy to the degree of a sense of satisfaction. When you see this person and feel like, wow, I'm so inspired by who they are, and I know I can reach the same state. So understanding that I can do the same. And it's not unquestionable. I should question, I should be skeptical. As seen in your questions, you are being skeptical. So that's very important. So is this right? Does this make sense or not? So based on this skeptical thinking, still to have that sense of inspiration, being inspired, and as I said, joy. So seeing His Holiness the Dalai Lama and just feeling this as an example. So if you have a connection to His Holiness, for instance, or anyone else you have a connection to, so when you perceive this person and it generates this deep sense of joy, and it's like a satisfactory joy. It's not like I need more and more and more of that. It's just okay in that moment. There's not like a sense of I want it even greater. It's not like an addictive kind of, but just a satisfied sense of joy. And of course, a joy that leads you to trying to become, that inspires you to become like this person. And usually we talk about 3 types of joy, faith, for instance, 3 types of devotion or 3 types of faith. One is just believing in what the person tells me, based on reasoning, of course, but believing in what they say, it makes sense to you. The second is this joyful faith, as I just described it, this kind of devotion, this happiness, just hearing what they said. And that's most important, not being physically around them, but just thinking of their incredible mind and of what they've said, their teachings. That's most important. And then thirdly, the faith of aspiration, where we aspire ourselves to become like that. So these are the 3 types of faith, or the 3 types of, well, I don't know whether you can call them devotion. So in certain contexts, it makes sense to use the word devotion or even worship, but it needs to be understood in the Buddhist context. All right. Then Jimmy's question. And if someone wants to add something to that, please, of course, go ahead.
Well, I will, but I'll put it on the chat. I'll find it and I'll put it.
Please do so. Thank you. Great. And then there's Jimmy's question about developing love and compassion for all sentient beings. So developing love and compassion for all sentient beings. Why and how? Yeah, why? I mean, why? Okay, but how? That's so difficult. Okay, so, but he's still saying why. So without having the view of emptiness first, how would we do that? No matter how good of a heart we have and how hard we try, we would always be biased towards some and feel aversion towards others, even if just very slightly, because of grasping to our own self. Do you agree? Well, it definitely helps to have understood emptiness, to have realized emptiness, but there's different degrees. Having a kind of a sense of what emptiness means, having a correct assumption, correctly assuming that emptiness is such and such. Definitely, the better understanding of emptiness, the stronger our love and compassion for others can grow, which is why His Holiness always emphasizes these 2, emptiness and bodhicitta. So we need emptiness for sure. And again, we need to make it part of our daily practice. Okay, but I still believe that even without emptiness, we can generate definitely a strong sense of love and compassion. Will aversion every now and every now and then pop up and affect our actions? Of course it will. But since our mind is very much based on habits. So everything we do right now, all our afflictions have arisen because of habits. And we all know this. We have times when we don't get angry for long periods of time. And then we allow ourselves to get angry, and that starts a new habit. And then the next day we get angry much easier and so forth. So the thing is, our mind works very well on the basis of habit. I'm saying works very well in the sense that we can use this to undo some of the habits we have. So if we habitually self-centered and habitually this and that, through mindfulness and through constant effort, so introspection, am I selfish or not, and applying the antidotes, I think we can definitely generate a greater sense of love and compassion for other sentient beings, which helps our understanding of emptiness again. And so they assist each other. But it seems to me that having the view of emptiness first, equanimity drops out as automatically and naturally, even without trying hard. It seems to me that having the view of emptiness first drops out. Oh yeah. So, okay. So if we have emptiness, of course, equanimity becomes more of a natural response. I agree. I think, of course, all others and myself are equally just appearances to my mind. They're all equal in that sense. Reasoning like this, does the view of emptiness lead to total equanimity without much further effort? No, I think we still need to make an effort, because just understanding emptiness is not enough. Of course, we all know that we need to realize emptiness conceptually, then directly. And once we realize it directly, that's also not the end of our afflictions. We still need to deepen this realization of emptiness, deepen in the sense of, well, familiarize with it further and further, again and again, entering into the meditative absorption or meditative equipoise, realizing emptiness to really make a change. So I don't think it's an automatic process. But it's good to do both together, absolutely, right? Really make the time and not to neglect one over the other, definitely. Okay, so Orit shared something. Touched on this. Okay. Oh, sorry, what is that? All right, okay. About peace. Still, peace is good. It's the best thing in the world. Otherwise, the world will become very complicated with all the ignorant idiots running around, chasing their own goals and fighting each other, as it is right now. Is there any need for that? Isn't peace for one, peace for all also? If one is in peace, then all are in peace, no? So why not just withdraw into single-pointed meditation on the emptiness and rest there forever? Why not? I see a bit of an inconsistency here. So here Jimmy's arguing, well, there's such a mess in the world. It always has been. I mean, it's always been messy. This world is very, very messy. Human world, extremely messy. So why not just aim for self-liberation? Doesn't make sense. Just peace. If I experience peace, well, the thing is, if I experience peace, do others experience peace as well? It has an effect on others, but unfortunately, not as much as I would want, others to be affected. But I think, well, it's up to us. In the end, it's up to us. The Buddha taught two ways. He taught liberation, self-liberation, and he taught Buddhahood. He gave us two options, basically. But I'm thinking that since we have the potential to become enlightened, since we have that, and even just working towards it, I mean, not even talking about Buddhahood. Yeah, it takes a long time. It's difficult. And so does liberation. It takes a long time. It's difficult. But it already changes a person. It makes a difference. If everyone were to, I mean, hypothetically, if everyone were to practice the Mahayana, practice Bodhisattva kind of ideal, or practice the universal vehicle, already things would change all around us. But of course, that's also true for liberation, working towards self-liberation. So in general, things would be better. But the emphasis being so much more on love and compassion and on taking responsibility for others. Because the thing is, like, if we just aim towards self-liberation, without having the wish to take everyone with us, it's different. I mean, it definitely makes a huge difference in terms of altruism and so forth. So, of course, in the Theravada tradition, there's a lot of emphasis on love, compassion, incredible love and compassion. Definitely love and compassion, focusing on all sentient beings. I absolutely believe that. But taking personal responsibility makes it so beautiful, to take everyone with us, in other words. So if we can do that, why not do it? If you have the potential to do so, I think it's beautiful, even if it takes longer. But it's everyone's choice. So this is just a personal opinion, my personal view on this. But in the end, it's of course a personal choice. All right. Okay. I hope I've answered these questions. Orit posted something, right? But I'm not sure. Let me just go back to screen sharing. Am I now? Okay. Oh yeah, there we go. Thank you. All right. So here's the chat. Orit to everyone. Okay, for some reason I can't open it.
You want me to share the screen?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Oh, you succeeded.
It's open, right?
Yeah. Geshe-ma?
Yes.
We can see it.
You can. Oh, I can't. Okay. I'm having some technical problems today. This is not the first, because I only see the meeting chat right now.
Okay, so I will share. It's okay.
Yeah, please do. Okay, so this is from Kachin Rinpoche, I believe. Yeah, Kachin Rinpoche, is that right? Between faith and this is okay. So Rinpoche says the difference between faith, tapa, and devotion, mogu. Mogu. Okay. All right. Gu kind of means more, like an interest, and gu means respect. So if we so here the thing is here, mogu is different to tepa, but I'm not sure I would use the word devotion. But okay, tepa is actually love, loving your lama, liking your lama, and trusting your lama. This is the experience of tepa. Mugu is when you see the wonderful qualities of your lama and generate a great deal of respect for him or her, to such an extent that you will never forget anything the lama teaches you. When you have so much trust, love, and devotion to the lama, you will always remember his or her words. Tepa and mugu may seem to be similar, yet they're different. Yeah, well, the thing is, what Rinpoche says is he uses tepa and mugu, but here the word devotion is used. So I don't know whether I would translate it with devotion, but anyway, okay. So first we have tepa, and out of this we're able to generate mugu. We have tepa, faith, trust, and respect for all lamas. Mugu, however, we have for just a few. Tepa basically means liking someone, but it's much more than that. You like someone because that person is not ordinary. That person is full of blessings. There's something holy and sacred about that person. When you're struck with this kind of feeling toward a sublime being to the extent that even the bodily hairs stand on end, when you have that kind of tepa, there's a mind-to-mind connection with your root lama, and the previously arisen tepa is now transformed into mogu. Tears come to your eye. This is not like tears come to your eyes. This is not like the tepa in the earlier days, but rather there's a mind merging with mind. I mean, definitely a beautiful explanation, but again, here it's the translator has used the word devotion for mogu. But anyway, so what I was talking about is what in the texts I basically talked about faith, in the sense as it's described in the scriptures, the three types of faith. So therefore, here Rinpoche speaks about Tepa in general, so love, okay, liking your Lama and trusting your Lama. All right, okay, yeah, so trust. Trust is definitely an important word. The way I describe these three types of faith, so first, believing faith, that includes trust, trusting this person, trusting what they say, trusting that they have your benefit, that your benefit is their main motivation, or not just yours, but the benefit of sentient beings is based, of course, on reasoning. Love here in the sense of like, well, what do you mean with love? Wanting the Lama to be happy? Because that's usually how love is defined. So the wish for someone to be happy, or a deep sense of affection. So affection, I guess this affectionate love is that kind of love. Okay, so interesting, because it's kind of a different mental factor. So if Tepa is love, liking your Lama, okay, and trusting your Lama, okay. Anyway, sorry, this is just my mind, how I'm used to looking at the different mental factors and you know, differentiating between them. But I guess there's no point to go through it now. I'd like to look at it when I have more time. And maybe we can make it available to everyone to read it. I mean, definitely to be able to read, of course, what Rinpoche says, being very precious. Okay, so thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. All right. And now let's start with a text. Am I sharing the screen right now? Not yet. Okay, good. Oh yeah, there we are. Okay, great. Now, so this is today's material. All right. Now, this is similar to what I did last time. I added a little bit. If you want to read it, there's no point for me to go through it again. But one thing I did after class last time, because, well, just not long ago, I taught a class in Tushita for about 10 days. And it's so wonderful to see people in the flesh. So there's definitely a lot of advantage to that, because I can pick up on what people need and don't need. You can just see from their faces. And it's so much easier to get a sense of, well, what should I talk about? What should I not talk about? Which is difficult in this context. So I asked for some feedback. I asked a person who studied the Dharma for many, many years now, and I started a person who didn't. I asked a person who didn't study for that long, and it was very good to hear what they had to say. So any kind of feedback is very welcome, just to get a sense. You know, if it's okay the way it is, fine. But if you don't need to say anything, but if you feel like go more into this, go more into that, just to get a general feedback, whether I can always make this adjustment needs to be seen, but it would be helpful. If you feel like, well, this was too fast or this was too slow, you can just in an anonymous way, you don't need to mention your name, say that, and I try to adjust as much as I can. Okay. Great. So anyway, based on the feedback I got last time, I'm not going to go over this again. Anyway, I wouldn't have done that. But so this is still the same as before, but a few things. Okay, now I got not the version I wanted. Or do I? It's not the version I had last time. I added a little bit. Oh, I added one or two things. For instance, what I forgot to mention was that the universal vehicle teachings, so the Mahayana teachings, the universal vehicle teachings, they disappeared, according to the historical kind of accounts, 40 years after the Buddha's passing away. So I added that. And so even though just shortly after the passing away of the Buddha, sorry, I just have to look for it. Shortly after the passing away of the Buddha, they had this first council, but that was mainly based on the fundamental vehicle. All right. Oh yes, here, 40 years after the passing away. And previously, So you had this coming together of all the arhats and so forth. Last time, what I didn't mention, and I added this, is that the 3 collections of teachings, the 3 baskets as they're called, they were actually brought together at that time. The sutra collection recited by Ananda, the Vinaya collection by Upali, and according to some accounts, the Abhidharma by Mahakashyapa, so the wisdom teachings by Mahakashyapa. I forgot, I didn't add that last time, but I thought it's better to add. So, okay. Everything else still the same. So now going back to Nāgārjuna. To make this connection with Nāgārjuna, and I said it's so important. Well, as we can see, as part of what I prepared here, there are 2 accounts on what realizations Nāgārjuna had attained, and that's also important. According to one description, he was a 7th ground bodhisattva. According to another, he became enlightened in that very lifetime. So that means Nāgārjuna became a Buddha while he was around as Nāgārjuna, which therefore, being still around in the form of a Buddha, if we make this connection to someone like Nāgārjuna, it has such a different effect on our mind. Now, there's some logic behind that, and it's important to understand the logic behind this. As we all know, if we receive a teaching by a person who's highly realized, even without knowing us, it definitely has an effect on our mind. No question about that. So a highly realized being who gives a teaching, even if you have no idea of the qualities of that Lama, of that person, well, it still has a positive effect. But knowing makes it even more powerful. If we know that this person is highly qualified, it's a realized being, it makes such an incredible difference. So with this belief, this person is now teaching us, and even though we're just reading the text, but it's like the person is talking to us, because in the way they are, these are the words of this person, and the person is still around. So to get that sense, it's not just a book, it's not just words. They were spoken by a person who is still, by a being who's still around, who's fully enlightened, and who our mind can connect to. This is the part I remember from Khalchen Rinpoche's description of the difference between Theba and Mogu. So saying you connect to the mind of another person, that is so important. It's like a mind-to-mind connection. It sounds a little spacey, it sounds a little weird, but it isn't spacey at all. It's totally realistic that we can actually connect to the mind of another person, especially a mind that has the capacity of a Buddha, that has the knowledge of a Buddha. We can even more so connect with that mind, because the moment we place our attention, the moment we focus on the mind of that being, of course, the being is aware of that and tries everything to connect to our mind. And so oftentimes in this context, we talk about blessings. This is such a weird term. And not long ago, I had lunch with Gengyatsola. Many of you know, of course, Geshe Gyatsola. He's been to Israel many times. He's an amazing, not just teacher, but also practitioner. And I said to Geshe-la, this word blessing is just so hard to really understand what it means. So Geshe-la really made a point over lunch, while eating, to explain, to give me his view on blessing. And I thought it was really beautiful. So after a bit of a discussion back and forth, in summary then, what Geshe-la explained was this: the mind, the body, speech, and mind of another person, and in particular the mind of this other person, because of their realizations, can have a positive effect on our mind. So it's almost like something jumps over, for lack of a better word. We just think in material terms, so it's very difficult for us to think that something material, something immaterial, such as the mind, can affect us positively. But the way Geshe-la described it, Geshe-la described it, was that he said that the mental qualities, they affect us in a positive way. So some people may call it inspiration, but inspiration falls short. It's more than that. It's not just feeling inspired to become like them or inspired to do this, that, and the other. No, it's more like some of this some of these positive qualities, they have a positive effect on our mind. Very hard to say. So that's called a blessing. They just transform our mind into something greater, to use the literal meaning of blessing. Therefore, just thinking of a great being can have a positive effect on our mind. And it's hard to measure. It's hard to even put it into words. But I guess with some study, with some understanding of the Dharma, it actually makes sense. All right. Having said that, now this connection with Nāgārjuna is important, and that's the whole point I'm making. So to not just study this text in terms of just an academic understanding, but to have a to do it in the complete way, as the Tibetans have done for so many, and as the Indians have done for centuries, to connect to the author as well, to make that special connection, appreciating what they've done, opening ourselves to their incredible quality. So listening with that kind of mind, or reading with that kind of mind, makes a huge difference. Okay, so having said that, of course, we need to know a little bit about also what Nāgārjuna has achieved, why he's so important. No need to go through the biography. I've read that last time, but I wrote the summary here. So that was based on the feedback I got, just to get like a summary of why he's so important. So here's the summary. In summary, there are three main reasons. So everything that was before the summary, we went through. No need to go through it again, but just to emphasize this again. And this is not just helpful in terms of understanding how important Nāgārjuna was, but also in terms of our understanding of philosophy, because it comes up in the text all the time. This word Shingde Soje, or trailblazer, if you like. Here I use the word pioneer because that's used most often, but it's really the Tibetan meaning is when you have someone who rides a chariot. So they're creating new path. They're trailblazer in that sense. They're creating new path, opening it up, new possibilities. So the Buddha alone was not enough. The Buddha, of course, no need to talk about the amazing teaching he's given, the amazing doors he's opened to us. But just the Buddha was not enough. We also needed beings like Nāgārjuna. So he's a pioneer of the universal vehicle because he reintroduced the teachings of the universal vehicle after they disappeared 40 years after the passing away of the Buddha. He returned its most important teachings, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, to the human realm, and he established that these sutras, and thus the universal vehicle, had been taught by the Buddha. So of course, not everyone believes that, but a lot of people do. And so again, based on the understanding that the Buddha taught it, they benefited from it greatly. Also, he's the pioneer of the explicit subject matter of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, because he was the first human being to receive the lineage of the profound view from the Bodhisattva Manjushri, this experiential lineage, not just any odd lineage, but an experiential lineage. So in the sense that the experiential understanding, the spiritual understanding that the Bodhisattva Manjushri had received, of course, through the Buddha, now Nāgārjuna also received. And that unbroken lineage was passed on to Nāgārjuna, then to other beings, and we still have it to this day. So even today, this lineage still exists, and we can fully benefit from it. So the view, he received this lineage, and he specified that emptiness is the explicit subject matter of these sutras, and gave detailed explanations of the meaning of emptiness. He was the first human to do so. Most notably, he's the pioneer of the Madhyamika school. This is what he's usually most well known for, or most revered for, because he's being the pioneer of the Madhyamika school, because he was the first human being to clearly expound the Madhyamika philosophy, and that's most important, by distinguishing which teachings of the Buddha were to be interpreted and which were definitive. Because the Buddha gave so many teachings, and if we listen to all of them, we would think they're contradictory. They're not contradictory. Why not? Because the author, the speaker of these teachings, the Buddha, wasn't mistaken here and there. Is there self? Or maybe there is. So I tell this person there's a self. And this other person, I tell them there's no self. Oh, no. He knew exactly. Of course, there is no inherently existent self. But based on the needs of other people, he therefore he taught that there was a self temporarily until their mind was ready to receive different teachings. So to distinguish and therefore take the Buddha's teachings and say, well, this needs to be interpreted and this is definitive, and not just doing it based on nothing. No, he based it on a particular sutra called the Teaching of Akshayamati Sutra. On that basis, he laid out the Madhyamika philosophy. So for us, it's all laid out there. It's easily understood, basically. Well, easily understood in the sense it's easily presented to us. If it wasn't for Nāgārjuna, no way. So we have this division into the four schools, and one of them being the highest, the Madhyamika school. Well, it's due to Nāgārjuna. All right. Anyway, so here you hear this concept of pioneers, and just for your information, so there is no pioneer of the fundamental vehicle, because there was never a time when this vehicle disappeared from the human realm. There's a pioneer of the implicit subject matter of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, though, as well as a pioneer of one of the other four Buddhist tenet systems, the Chittamatra school. So Asanga, of course, very important. Here I put him just into a footnote. As mentioned above, is the pioneer of the implicit subject matter of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, because he was the first human being to receive the lineage, again, of this experiential lineage of the extensive conduct from the Bodhisattva Maitreya. Both Maitreya, Bodhisattva Maitreya and Manjushri, of course, were celestial beings of the pure realms. They were celestial of the celestial realm because they resided in pure realms. So they were the first human being. So Asanga was the first human being to receive the lineage of the extensive conduct, and to specify that the grounds and path leading to Buddhahood are the implicit subject matter of these sutras, and to give detailed explanations on these grounds and path. Okay, so Asanga is, I just mentioned him here, although our focus is on Nāgārjuna, but I'm mentioning him here because they're always talked in together. Usually Nāgārjuna, Asanga, Nāgārjuna, Asanga. Likewise, Asanga is the pioneer of the Chittamatra school. Well, he was the first human being to expound Chittamatra philosophy by distinguishing on the basis of the sutra unraveling the thought, which of the Buddha's teachings need to be interpreted and which are definitive. Again, making that distinction, explaining to us clearly. But there's no pioneer of the other two tenet systems, the Vaibhashika and Sautantrika, because they never disappeared from the human realm. That's one reason. And because these schools have no tradition of distinguishing between the interpretable and definitive teachings of the Buddha. All the teachings that the followers of each of the two schools accept as originating from the Buddha are taken literally. Okay, so I thought this footnote was important. I didn't want to put it into the actual text. If you read it at your own time, if this is a little complicated, please do. But in terms of philosophy, this is really important. You need to know this. If you study philosophy, it comes pretty much at the beginning of your Geshe studies. To know, pioneer, what is important, interpretative, definitive teachings, and so forth. So if you can remember this part, it's definitely helpful. All right. And so then I went on to say, well, Nāgārjuna was a prolific writer. He composed so many texts, lucky for us. They're all listed below. But there are also, what is also important is that sutric texts that he has composed. Okay, so there are certain sutric texts on the basis of which we can say that Nāgārjuna is the pioneer of the universal vehicle, the pioneer of the explicit subject matter of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, and the pioneer of the Madhyamika school, which are his 5 or 6 collections of reasoning and his compendium of sutra. So those two texts are most important with regard to this. The 6 collections of reasoning, of which the principal treatise is the Fundamental Wisdom, present the reasonings that establish that the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras and thus the universal vehicle were taught by the Buddha and so forth. So they present the reasoning, while the compendium of sutra provides the scriptural support for all this, for these reasonings. Okay, so just again, for your information. So what did I say so far? Well, Nāgārjuna is important for being a pioneer in 3 ways. I gave you the reasons for doing so. And we can say that the text that indicate that are the 6 collections, 5 or 6, but let's call them the 6 collections of reasoning. And one of them is, of course, the Precious Garland. On the basis of that, we can understand that he was a pioneer in those 3 ways. Okay. Here, regarding the Nāgārjuna's level of spiritual realization, the Buddha himself having prophesied, Nāgārjuna says in the great Drum Sutta that Nāgārjuna was a bodhisattva who had attained the 7th ground. Of course, when the Buddha said it, he was like, there's going to be a bodhisattva who will have attained the 7th ground. So, but Nāgārjuna was a bodhisattva on the 7th ground. And Chandakirti, in his commentary on the Guhya Samaja Tantra called Illuminating Lamp, he says that Nāgārjuna attained the enlightened state of a Buddha in that very life. Okay, so here we follow what Nāgārjuna definitely said. Well, there's not necessarily a contradiction. He was a bodhisattva on the 7th ground, but attained on the basis of tantric practice, he attained the state of a Buddha. And then you have all the texts. We went through them last time, so don't need to go through them again. Okay, so you can read them when you have time. He also composed a medical text that is widely known, the Yoga Sataka. But these are just some of the numerous treatises Nāgārjuna wrote, many of which have been translated into Tibetan. So if you look at the table of contents of what is called the Tengyur, these are the translated works or the collection of Tibetan translations of Buddhist treatises by Indian masters. Really long description. So it's called the Tengyur. This is what's still available nowadays. All the works that the Tibetans translated, of course, you have all the words of the Buddha that were translated into Tibetan, the Gangyur, or the collection of Tibetan translations of Buddhist text by the Buddha, of texts by the Buddha, or the words of the Buddha. And you have the Tengyur. Now, Nāgārjuna's text, of course, is part of the Tengyur, because it's not what the Buddha taught. And according to the table of content, there are 117 different works that the Tibetans translated by Nāgārjuna. His most famous disciple we've heard was Yedua. And also, with regard to the Precious Garland in particular, well, it's commonly considered to be part of the Madhyamika literature. Since it is commonly considered to be part of the Madhyamika literature, it is also called the Precious Garland of the Middle Way. So, Umarinjintama, this is how it's usually referred to. But what's important, like the other 5 treatises of the 6 collections, now the first one is, of course, the fundamental vehicle. And then there are a few others that many of us probably, or many of you haven't heard of. Well, some of them, the 60 verses and so forth, you probably heard of. They've also been taught, I think, by Geshe Damdra, for instance. So like the other 5 treatises of the 6 collections of reasonings, it expounds emptiness. It talks of emptiness. But what distinguishes it from the other 5 is that it also explains the conventional existence of reality. How do phenomena exist conventionally? On top of that, the practice is common to 3 beings of different spiritual capacity that we hear about in the Lamrim, for instance. And as part of the latter, the grounds and path that lead practitioners to the state of a Buddha. And really, the main purpose of the Precious Garland is to convey in an easily comprehensible way how we should practice the Dharma. That's really what it is, because it's so comprehensive. It's got so many different aspects to it. All right, so we went from Nāgārjuna, emphasizing who he was, his importance, to generate, of course, appreciation, gratitude, faith, joyful faith, and to make this connection, this mind-to-mind connection. I think that's really important here in this context here. So, but understanding, so not just this, of course, this emotional kind of connection, that is important to fully benefit from his words, but also to understand in the kind of philosophical context how he's important, why he's again and again mentioned as a pioneer of this and pioneer of that, to get a better understanding why that is the case. But then returning to the Precious Garland, or starting with the Precious Garland in that sense, well, it's basically teaching us how to practice. Then there are several different translations of the Precious Garland. It's not just one, which makes sense. I mean, over so many centuries, the Precious Garland was taught, and there are different editions. The Derge, the Chone, the Natan, the Beijing, the Shoal editions. You don't usually hear about these. But there are also oftentimes texts that are preferred. So in the different traditions, of course, there's also a difference. We don't need to go through this here. It's just confusing. So these are just examples that one edition has more verses. Some have less, some are newer or a little different. But here we're following the version that is found in Gyaltsabje's commentary on the Precious Garland. He has 5 chapters and 500 verses, because that's the commentary I mainly follow. But as to the if there are extra verses, if we have enough time, and if I can find the verses, then we can also go through them. It's only 6, and another version is just 4. So let's see. Anyway, here we start with the actual text. I'm racing here a little bit because I want to do a meditation, so I apologize. But everything really, what I've been explaining is in here, and it's not hard to understand. So you can read it if you have some time. So the Precious Garland, advice to a king. That's literally what it says here. Precious Garland, advice to a king. Sometimes people say of the advice to a king, but in Tibetan there's no genitive, so I left it. Okay, here's the Sanskrit name. It's always mentioned at the beginning to show that its origin is from the Sanskrit, so it was not a Tibetan. It's not of a Tibetan origin. I'm probably pronouncing it incorrectly. Raja Parikata Ratnamala. We usually say Ratnavali, but here in this version it says Ratnamala. Gyebola Damchawa Rinpoche Tongwa in Tibetan, or this is the English translation. So Raja means Gyabo, means king. Gyabo in Tibetan. The la here connoting two. It's the preposition, the Tibetan preposition. Parikata means advice, and so forth. Again, you can read it on your own. As for the Sanskrit term for garland, some Tibetan versions of the Precious Garland cite the Sanskrit word mala, some vali, and some mali. So both mala and vali mean garland. However, the term mali is not correct because it means that which has a garland. So here I'm quoting Samdon Rinpoche. This is just putting everything together, Gyaltsabje, Samdon Rinpoche, and so forth. So here, Samdon Rinpoche, who's an expert in Sanskrit, he says in some versions, and I've come across the online version, for instance, that you can download in Tibetan, it says Mali in Tibetan, but that's wrong. It should be by either Mala or Vali. Nowadays, when referring to the Precious Garland with its Sanskrit name, the most common title is Ratnavali, so we're more familiar with this. Okay, anyway, this is just a little bit at the side. And then the translator's homage. Homage to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Now, I wanted to say a little bit about the translators because they're usually not mentioned. But of course, they're not just called translators, they're called lotsawas. They don't just call them, there's another word for translator, sungyur. Sungyur is, it's another word for interpreter or translator. So when I translate, I'm called sungyur. I'm not called lotsawa. Why? Because these lotsawas had incredible qualifications. They were oftentimes highly realized. And so I think it's important to mention them here in this context because our appreciation, our gratitude should not just go towards Nāgārjuna, but also towards the lotsawas who often sacrifice their own lives. Many of them lost their life, as part of the process. And to imagine to translate these texts without dictionaries, I don't think people had dictionary. It was hard enough to get a book in general. So without any iPads and so forth, how did they do it? Incredible. Unbelievable. So again, we need to spend some time and get a sense of appreciation and not just, it's just a book, big deal. The work, the hardship, the dedication that went through well, by the author, but also by these great beings. If we really appreciate that, then every word becomes precious. So I want to emphasize this, to make the most out of it. This is, with this attitude, we should read this, that every word is precious and that so much work went into this. Anyway, to do this, I want to say a little bit about the translators. So there was an Indian master called Nāgārjuna, Yeshin in Tibetan, and the Tibetan Lotsawa, Chokru Lui Gyaltsen. First, Nāgārjuna, he's very well known, especially when you studied Parchin, you hear his name. Well, frequently is exaggerated, but you hear his name. So he was an 8th century Buddhist master from Nalanda who expounded the Madhyamika and Yogacara schools and belongs to Bhava Viveka's Svatantrika Madhyamika tradition. So even though he was more of a follower of the Svatantrika Madhyamika as opposed to the Prasangika, it doesn't matter. He did a great job translating the text. So it doesn't distinguish between Svatantrika and Prasangika. We, of course, talk about it from the Prasangika school point of view. He was the teacher and ordination master of Shantarakshita. Many of us know Shantarakshita. His Holiness mentions him again and again. He was brought to Tibet by the Tibetan king, Tison Detsen, and he established basically the monastic line in Tibet. Monasticism was introduced by Shantarakshita, the abbot. Tibetan sources refer to him, Shantarakshita, and Kamalashila as the Rangyu Shasum, the 3 Eastern Svatantrikas, indicating their origin in Eastern India. Nāgārjuna is perhaps best known for his work distinguishing the two truths. Yeah, this is what I mentioned earlier. This is what he's known for. This is what's mentioned in the Parchin text when you study the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras pretty much at the beginning of your studies. And then who is Chokyu Lui Gyaltsen? He was an early Tibetan translator of great importance and one of the 25 disciples of Padmasambhava who recognized him as an incarnate bodhisattva. So he was not just an ordinary person, definitely recognized by Guru Rinpoche as a bodhisattva. He worked closely with the Indian masters Vimalamitra, Nāgārjuna, Jinamitra, and Surendra Bodre, and is vital to the continuation of the Vinaya lineage in Tibet. Okay, all right. So now, as to the meditation, I want us to just generate together the sense of appreciation, of gratitude towards Nāgārjuna, but also the translator. So, but before we start, just to summarize the time we spent today, well, I answered the questions, of course, but most importantly, we went into the text. I gave you a little bit of a summary of who Nāgārjuna was. Of course, being a pioneer in the 3 ways I described, very important to us, because without that, we wouldn't have the Mahayana as were the teachings of the universal vehicle as readily available as we have it now. Also including the Madhyamika, the Prasangika Madhyamika view being so clearly laid out to us, being so clearly explained to us. So very important to appreciate what Nāgārjuna has done in that way, but of course also understanding he was the 7th ground bodhisattva and became fully enlightened. We take those 2 explanations. So a Buddha in his own right, and therefore, of course, this omniscient mind still around, still there to inspire us, to bless us in the way I talked about it before. So that's important, understanding that he's composed so many texts, many of them available in Tibetan, and they can be translated into English. And then, of course, we have the 2 translators who were so special, both of them amazingly special masters who underwent a lot of hardship to make this text available to us. And now we have the great fortune to start next time with the actual text, the 1st chapter. Okay, so that was the homage by the translators, and Nāgārjuna's homage is to come next time. All right. Okay. Anyway, that's it for now. I hope I didn't speak too fast. I wanted to quickly go through it, and any feedback, of course, in particular, any negative feedback actually is very appreciated, because again, I cannot really read your faces. I only see a few people So I'm happy to make adjustments that it's most suitable for all of you. I'll try. All right.
Can you close it, please? Because I don't have the option.
Okay, sure. All right. Should I
stop sharing? So
stop sharing. One participant can share at a time. Multiple participants can share advanced sharing options.
It's happened to you too, huh?
Okay. All right. Never mind.
Okay.
You see his holiness, that's great. And then let's do a meditation together. Just to remind us who Nāgārjuna was and so forth. So I'll lead you through it. And again, we start with some breathing meditation just to calm the mind, focus the mind. So now let's take to mind the incredible importance of the author of the Precious Garland. Generate a sense of appreciation and gratitude. Since without him, we wouldn't have the teachings of the universal vehicle available to us today. In particular, when it comes to emptiness and its meaning. Understanding Madhyamika philosophy. And which of the Buddha's teachings need to be interpreted and which are definitive. All that is possible because of incredible important work Nāgārjuna did. And everything he teaches in particular in the Precious Garland is based on his own experience, his own realizations. And even though he's no longer around or no longer visible to us, has attained the fully awakened state of a Buddha. And is there to guide us and inspire us. Especially through his words, the Precious Garland. So let's generate that deep sense of joy. Or joyful faith. Towards Nāgārjuna. As well as trust in his words. In the form of believing faith. And thirdly, aspirational faith. The aspiration to become just like him. But it's not just the author, not just Nāgārjuna. Who gives us the opportunity to study this precious text. We should also remember the incredible kindness of the Lotsawas. Who translated this text into Tibetan. So that its practice was kept alive in Tibet. The Indian Nalanda masters Nāgārjuna and the Tibetan Lotsawa Chokru Lui Gyaltsen. It was through their hard work, their dedication, and sacrifice that we can comfortably study, reflect, and meditate on this precious text. And now to conclude this short meditation, let's dedicate whatever positive potential we've accumulated, focusing in particular on the author and the translators of the Precious Garland. May it become a cause for us to attain the state of a Buddha, the awakened state of a fully enlightened being, just like Nāgārjuna and Buddha Shakyamuni and so many others. Not just for our own benefit, but most importantly, for the benefit of each and every sentient being. And may the virtue we've accumulated also cause our great spiritual masters, who are inseparable from Nāgārjuna and Shakyamuni Buddha, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all other great masters, to have a long and healthy life. And may the virtue we've accumulated today also have an impact on the people around us, our family, our friends, the communities we live in. May it bring them more inner peace and satisfaction. So I'll just read the dedication prayer. Oh, there it is. Through the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings, without exception, into that enlightened state. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All-powerful Chinrezig, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Okay, thank you very much. Well, you've got the material basically for next week. I didn't come as far as I thought I would. So if you could read it in advance, then you're prepared for what's to come. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.